Not everything we share is necessarily true. Oh, maybe it is. Partially. The problem is people don't believe anything unless they've seen it with their own eyes. I used to be one of them. Don't judge me. I never believed in anything beyond what I could touch or see: ghosts, Djinn people claiming to rise from the dead and come back with stories. Rubbish. I needed proof. Show me, or I won't believe a word that was me. I did believe, not until I had to. Sounds contradictory. Doesn't it take a breath? Calm down. Just because you can see something doesn't mean it isn't there. Just because you don't feel anyone around you doesn't mean you're truly alone. Quite the opposite there. So much happening around us that we don't know if we even notice. Like us, others live, and while you might deny their existence, others are out there confirming it, swearing by it. The only difference: they are aware of us. They see us. We just don't see them. That's not just my opinion. It's written. The Lord himself said they perceive us from where we cannot perceive them. To some people they see more than we do. Let not beat around the bush. My name is Zachary Miller. Zach for short. I'm the eldest in my family, a college student. That's probably all you need to know. Some time ago we took a short vacation. Me, my parents, Bob and Laura, my younger brother Kyle, and my sister Dawn. It was early October, and we figured a quick trip to the Outer Banks in North Carolina might break the monotony. October meant empty beaches and boarded-up shops. No crowds, just quiet. A peaceful spot. People love it. So my dad spoke to a local realtor, Mr. Thompson, and arranged to rent a small place for a couple of nights. It wasn't high season, so prices were decent. And that specific place even better, very affordable. In just a couple of days we were off. The family was in high spirits. My siblings buzzing about what beaches we do visit, where we do shop, what we do explore. Me, I had a weird feeling, a weight on my chest. I could explain why. But from the moment we started the trip, the excitement I initially felt just evaporated. Something was off. Still, I kept quiet. The drive took about 6, maybe 7 hours long and dull. But when we arrived, the house was worth it. It was not in a big apartment complex, as I had imagined. Instead, it was the second floor of a stone-built villa, luxurious, styled almost like an American cottage. The first floor, we were told, was sealed off. The place had this elegant, solid charm, and it felt like the kind of house you could comfortably live in despite its small size. Like most villas of this type, the second floor had external stairs. We didn't even need to go near the ground floor to reach our place. That bottom level was locked off, supposedly empty. The upstairs apartment was fully furnished. Quite fancy even, with a balcony off the living room that looked down into a small, fenced-in backyard belonging to the unit below. The other windows offered views of neighboring buildings and quiet streets. But something about the timing felt wrong. Even Mr. Thompson mentioned it to Dad. How amazing the summer had been. How quiet the area got in autumn. Next summer, he said, I'd find you a prime spot. That first day went by normally. We unpacked, settled in, cooked a bit. That evening we walked around, stretched our legs. Nothing unusual. We were all exhausted from the trip and fell asleep like we'd been knocked out cold. The next day, just around sunset, I was sitting with a book I had brought along. Kyle, Mom, and Dad were out. Dawn had left the house either. She was standing on the deck outside my room, staring into the street, arms crossed and a frown on her face. She made a sarcastic comment about the vacation being a mistake, something about the air feeling heavy and depressing, not refreshing like she hoped. I did answer. I was too into my book to bother. A few minutes later she rushed in and said there was someone in the backyard. So what? I thought not like we own the whole place. She insisted that the gate was locked from the outside with heavy chains and rusted padlocks. No one should be able to get in. Still, I told her maybe someone moved in downstairs, or maybe the owners came by to clean or check on something. I didn't think much of it. She wasn't convinced. Just come see what you're doing, she urged, clearly shaken. So I followed her out onto the balcony. She pointed to a spot below. I leaned out slowly, not wanting to draw attention. It was the first time I really looked at the yard. It wasn't big, a couple of struggling plants, a few half-dead bushes, and in one corner, a dead cat. His body had already started to bloat. No one had moved it. Then I saw him, an old man, hunched over a planter, digging. He wasn't far, and I could see him clearly from the back. He seemed to be planting something, or maybe just messing with the soil. He wasn't moving much. I watched in silence. Dawn kept whispering that she was sure the unit below was empty. I told her again to relax. Maybe the guy was a gardener. The man started humming. It sounded like an old hymn, maybe Amazing Grace, the kind our grandparents might have listened to on dusty records when they were alone with their thoughts. But then he stopped and began to speak. I couldn't make out the words. They were soft mumbled, talking to himself, maybe. Then, without warning, he began to weep, loud wrenching sobs, like a child mourning something he could fix. I almost called out to him, asked if he was okay, if he needed anything, but he didn't respond, didn't even look up. He kept crying. Then he straightened slowly and leaned against the wall. That's when I saw his hands. I froze. They were riddled with holes, each about the size of a dime, deep and oozing blood. His fingers were caked in mud. It looked like he clawed into the soil until his hands were ruined. Dawn clutched my arm, trembling, her breath catching. I wanted to tell her to go back inside, but I could. I didn't want to go in either. I needed to know who this man was, what he was doing. I told her softly to head inside, promising to follow. I turned toward her, and she wasn't alone anymore. There was something next to Dawn, a shadow, like the kind you see in broad daylight, cast by your body on the ground. That then what I saw. Only this was near sunset, and more importantly, the dark shape beside her had the clear form of a child. Small, short-standing, right by her feet. The figure was staring too, peering between the bars of the back deck railing, watching the man below just like we were. I froze, unable to speak. Dawn hadn't noticed a thing. She stood there unaware, with something inhuman inches away from her. I didn't dare point it out, afraid she'd just scream and fall, or jump, from the deck in a panic. Then, the little black shadow by her side turned to look at me. Its gaze was steady, unnerving. There were no features, just darkness. A silhouette, a shadow no more than 3 feet tall, clinging to Dawn or her leg, like it was seeking protection. I didn't wait. I grabbed her arm and pulled her inside, slamming the glass door shut behind us. "What's wrong with you?" she asked, startled. "Why are you dragging me like that?" "Listen to me," I said, my voice low and urgent. "No matter what, don't go out there again. Not unless I'm with you." She stared, bewildered. "Did you see something? Do you believe me now?" "Who was that guy downstairs?" "Does not matter," I said quickly. "We're not going near that yard again. We use the back stairwell to go out. We don't go near his floor ever. A guy and not right in the head, singing and muttering to himself. He was cutting himself." She interrupted, trembling. "He was cutting," I said, trying to stay calm. "His arms were just injured, that and all." Dawn fell silent. She didn't argue, but the fear didn't leave her eyes. She tried to believe me. I think I wanted to believe myself too. But I wasn't afraid of the man downstairs. I was afraid of the shadow clinging to my sister's leg. Our parents returned not long after. Their presence broke the tension, distracting us, even if only for a while. Dawn and I had already made a pact not to say anything. If we told them, Dad would insist we leave the Outer Banks immediately. She agreed and said nothing. The rest of the evening passed as normally as it could. When it was time for bed, I was somewhat comforted by the fact that I shared a room with my younger brother, Kyle. At least I wasn't alone, but my thoughts kept spinning. About the man downstairs, the blood on his arms, and that unnatural shadow. I didn't believe in ghosts or Djinn or any of that. That stuff never worked on me. Still, I must have drifted off mid-thought. I woke later to the sound of someone crying. It was not just any crying. It was a frail, old man voice trembling with pain. The same voice I had heard earlier from the deck. How could it be so close now? I bolted upright. The door to the deck was still closed. Kyle was fast asleep in his bed, but in the far corner of the room, I saw something. Or someone. A figure. Hunched over, leaning against the wall, head buried in his arms, his body curled tightly on the floor as he wept. I could move. My entire body felt paralyzed. My mind froze, unable to process what I was seeing. Who was this? How did he even get in? The crying stopped. The man remained seated, motionless. Then slowly, he lifted his head to look at me. His eyes were completely white. No irises, no pupils, just solid, milky white, so bright, it almost seemed like light was shining from them. My heart dropped. I wasn't brave, not enough to stare at something like that and stay composed. What did that look mean? Was he about to leap at me? Speak! Disappear! He began to rise, lifting both arms as if reaching toward me, and then he screamed. It was the worst sound I had ever heard, a raw guttural shriek, and it was real, because Kyle woke up terrified, asking what was going on. I shouted, "Don't, not look, don't look anywhere." But it was too late. Kyle looked, the man stood or floated. I could tell, and lunged at Kyle. He grabbed my brother by the legs, trying to drag him off the bed. Kyle screamed as I grabbed his arms, pulling back with everything I had. The man pulled from one side, I from the other. My brother kicked, panicked, struggling to break free. Mom called from the hallway asking what was going on. Neither of us answered. Kyle was crying hysterically, and when Mom and Dad burst in, he clung to me, not saying a word. I saw it in his eyes, though. He didn't want me to speak. I don't know why, but I understood. So I said only, "There is something wrong with this house. It's not normal." My parents exchanged confused glances. Dad asked Kyle if what I was saying was true. Kyle didn't reply. Well, they kept talking. I suddenly thought of Dawn. "Where is Dawn?" I asked. I'd assumed she was asleep in her room. But I ran. Some instinct had kicked in. Something was wrong. When I got to her room, it was empty. I called her name, my voice trembling. Then the lights went out. A scream echoed from the bathroom. We ran toward it. The door was locked from the inside. Dad and I threw our weight against it, Kyle right behind us. It burst open. The lights flickered back on. Dawn lay collapsed on the floor, her body locked in tremors, eyes glued to the bathroom mirror like something had just vanished from it. The glass reflected only her pale face. No shadow, no specter, but the way she stared, wide-eyed and unblinking, made my skin crawl. As if it had been there and she's seen it, just her. And her silent, terrified stare had knelt beside her, calling her name, shaking her gently. She didn't respond. We carried her out, trying everything to wake her. Eventually she stirred. She said only one thing. "Leave me alone. I just want to sleep." Back in her room, I glanced toward the glass door to the deck. It was closed, but something stood on the other side. That same shadow, the small, dark figure, was watching us from behind the glass. Pressed against it, it didn't move. It didn't blink. It just stared. Its posture looked twisted, as if it were in pain. My parents didn't see it. They said to let her rest and stepped out. I turned to Kyle. Do you see that outside the door? He followed my gaze and shook his head. What, there nothing there? You really don't see it? I had enough of this bullshit, he snapped. I don't want to hear any more. Then he marched over to the glass door and flung it open. The shadow vanished. He turned on me. You need to stop lying. You're the only one who saw any of this. You knew she was in the bathroom. How? You think I locked her in there? I asked, stunned. I don't know, he shouted. Just like you tried to throw me off the bed. I was pulling you away from him, the man in the corner. There was no one else here. You liar, he yelled. I woke up to you screaming. You grabbed me and begged me not to tell. That was you. He stormed out, leaving me speechless. I didn't know what was happening anymore. To him. To me, the night passed, like all things do, but it left something behind. A doubt, a question. Abused my own sanity. The second day, Dawn moved around the house like nothing had happened. She acted completely normal, cheerful, even as though the events of the previous day had vanished from her memory. I wanted to ask her if she remembered anything, but before I could, my father cut me off. You know the rule, Bob said, his voice stern but tired. Let it go. Kyle, my younger brother, hadn't needed an excuse to flee. He rushed out of the house that morning, barely making eye contact. It was as if he couldn't bear to be in the same room with me anymore. That left me alone with my parents and Dawn in what was supposed to be a refreshing change of scenery. This summer trip to the Outer Banks. But none of us had any desire to leave the house now. Not even Dawn, who still acted as though nothing had happened. I tried to talk to her. She gave me nothing in return. As for my parents, they told me again and again that I was just anxious. Get out, get some fresh air. My mother, Laura, insisted. You feel better, I'm not anxious, I replied, frustration creeping into my voice. Did Kyle say something before he left? They stayed silent. That told me everything. Kyle had said a word. I wanted to leave the house too, but the thought gnawed at me. What if I came back and found my family gone, or worse? What if something happened to Dawn while I was out? I'm not leaving, I told them. Anyone else who wants to can go. As I spoke with my parents, I noticed something unsettling. Dawn was no longer in the room. I walked through the house calling her name and eventually found her standing on the upstairs deck, her back turned to me, staring down at the fenced-in backyard with eerie focus. Her hands were clasped near her face. What are you doing out here? I asked as I stepped closer. It did not the time or place to be playing around, but when she turned, my breath caught in my throat. Her hands were smeared with blood, her mouth completely red, stained with it. Before I could react, she flung something into the yard. I instinctively leaned over the railing to see what it was. A rat. She had thrown a dead rat into the backyard. Yes, just like that. My sister had been holding a dead rat covered in blood. Before I could say another word, she bolted for the bathroom, locked the door, and shut herself inside. I stood frozen in place, stunned. Minutes later, she came out as if nothing had happened. Her face was freshly washed, all traces of blood gone. I just want to sleep in my room, please, she muttered. I followed her, blocking the doorway. What were you doing out there? I said I want to sleep, she snapped, her eyes flashing. Either you leave or I call Mom and Daz. Go ahead, I said, my voice tight. If they knew what you were doing out there. Get out, she said coldly, slamming the door in my face. My head spun. My sister, my sweet, giggly little sister, had been eating a rat. That night, for the third time, I woke to the same sound. A strange, muffled rustling. I turned to check on Kyle, who was fast asleep, breathing deeply. But the noise, it wasn't coming from our room anymore. It was coming from the living room. Grabbing my Bible from the nightstand, I flipped to Psalm 91 and began reciting under my breath for courage. Slowly, I crept out of the room. The moment I opened the door, something struck me. The floor was soaked. Water everywhere, covering the tiles, the rug, everything. It sloshed under my feet as I stepped into the living room. Then came the sound of glass shattering. It came from Donna's room. I ran to her door and tried the handle. It was locked from the inside. I banged on it. Once, twice. Then it gave way. What I saw would haunt me forever. Dawn was at the balcony window, slamming her head violently against the glass. Again and again, her face was a mess of blood, her eyes wide and unblinking, completely white. I rushed to her and tried to pull her away, but she was relentless, smashing her forehead against the pane with unnatural strength. The glass finally shattered. Only then did I notice the blood trail on the wall, the broken window next to the balcony. She'd already busted that earlier. Pieces of glass were embedded in her skin, her face torn open. She had driven her face into a jagged shard, on purpose. Each time I tried to hold her back, she thrashed with terrifying strength. I could restrain her. When she finally collapsed from exhaustion, I grabbed her arm to pull her away. Then, when she began to convulse, I let go. My hand had left a scorch mark on her skin, a burn. The shape of my fingers was seared into her arm. I looked down at my own hand, horrified. Dawn fell to the floor, writhing and screaming, blood still pouring from her wounds. Pi stood paralyzed. Then Bob and Laura burst into the room. Laura screamed the moment she saw her daughter. Bob rushed to help, but the moment he touched her, Dawn let out another inhuman shriek. I yanked my father back. Dawn, don't touch her, Dad. Don't. Laura was sobbing now. Do something. Do something. She's dying. I recited the Lordine prayer, then Psalm 91, louder this time. Dawn growled, literally growled, and glared at me with hatred. She covered her ears, trying to block out my voice. That only made me read louder. Blood began to drip from her eyes, from her nose. Her body convulsed harder. Stop, son, Bob pleaded. She can take it. This is the only way. I shouted. Suddenly, Dawn fell to her knees and gripped her stomach. She retched, and out came snakes. Dozens of tiny snakes slithered from her mouth, most of them dead. A few were alive, briefly, before twitching and dying on the floor. Laura fainted. Kyle stood frozen in the doorway, unable to move. Dawn continued vomiting until the snakes stopped. Then she collapsed completely, her limbs limp. Bob rushed over, panic in his voice. She dead, your sister. For dead. I felt her chest. No, Dad, she's still breathing. They wrapped her in a sheet, too afraid to carry her directly. Bob said they should take her to a hospital. But what could they tell them? That she vomited snakes? That touching her left burns? This house is the right, I said. We need to leave now. Bob looked grim. You think leaving will fix this? I didn't know what to say. His words felt more like a warning than a question. We agreed. Laura, Kyle, and Dawn would go back to Charlotte. Bob and I would stay behind strangely. I was fine with that. I wanted to stay. Something in me had to see this through. Before my mother left, Bob gave her strict instructions. Take Dawn to a doctor. Say she'd been sick and vomiting constantly. Don't mention anything else. Laura resisted, pleading with him to come too, but he stood firm. Later, Bob took me into the living room. Now tell me everything, he said, from the beginning. I recounted everything. The man in the backyard, the locked-off basement apartment, the rats, the blood, the water, the snakes. Every twisted detail. Bob listened, silent and pale. Then he stood. We going downstairs. I froze. The basement apartment had been locked from day one, and now my father wanted to open it. We took the staircase down. Bob had brought a crowbar and flashlights. I clutched a small pocket Bible like a talisman. We broke the chain in the lock and stepped inside. As soon as I entered, I found myself saying, "Jesus Christ." My heart tightened, and as soon as I walked in, I felt like I was stepping into a place of the dead or something cursed. The walls were peeling, revealing faded wallpaper, the apartment clearly unfinished. No one had lived here for years, but there were a few chairs and small tables thrown to the side, all broken. We moved cautiously through the room. One by one, in the corner, we saw an old mattress lying on the floor, looking like something from a hospital bed, rusty and neglected. It was black. No, not black. It was covered in dried blood, dark and crusted all over the mattress. I could feel Dad, Robert, trembling beside me. I turned to him and whispered, "Dad, let her leave." But he didn't answer. He wasn't even looking at the bed. Instead, he was staring into the darkest room, the one furthest from us. But this room wasn't dark at all. In the dim light, two glowing eyes stood out, like a cat's eyes in the night. But these weren't cat eyes. They were human eyes. I was too scared to shine the flashlight in that direction. I didn't want to see where those eyes were coming from. Dad didn't hesitate. He aimed the flashlight straight at the eyes, and that's when I saw it. It was a large black monkey chained by its hands and feet to the floor. It wasn't moving. It was standing still, staring at us like a statue. This wasn't the kind of monkey you'd find at a zoo. No, this one looked vicious, horrifying. "Don't get any closer," Dad said urgently. I took a step forward, my foot landing on something soft. I shined the light down, and I saw papers and ropes scattered across the floor, strange symbols scribbled on the papers. There was a long rope with knots tied all along it, and on the floor, drawings that didn't make sense. Dad muttered, "Jesus Christ, this is witchcraft." Suddenly, something grabbed me from behind and pulled me to the ground. I screamed, but my voice was lost in the chaos. When I finally came to, I saw Dad yelling and pushing something away from me. At first, I couldn't make out what it was, but then, to my horror, I realized it was the monkey. It was the old man again, the same man who had attacked me earlier. He was on top of me, scratching and punching with terrifying strength. I tried to push him off, but it felt like I was stuck, like I couldn't move. Dad was desperately trying to pull the old man off me, just like the way I had tried to fight with my brother Kyle, back home. Remember when I told you about that? It was the same struggle. Dad, using his cane, hit the man hard on the head. The old man staggered back, crawling on his hands and knees like an animal. I could hear the screeching sounds coming from him, like the noises animals make when they're in pain. That and when the walls started to come alive. Rats, dozens of them, running out from every corner, rushing toward us. Dad grabbed my arm, and we both sprinted toward the door we had entered from, but the old man was right behind us, crawling faster than I could have ever imagined, like some wild creature. Dad barely managed to open the door and we ran out, slamming it behind us. But even as we closed it, we could hear banging from inside. The old man, or whatever that thing was trying to get out. The door was shaking, and we were pushing against it from the outside while it pulled from within. We could hear the sound of something screaming from the other side. Then, with a final tug, the door slammed shut. We ran down the stairs out onto the street and didn't stop until we found a taxi. We had to leave, knowing if we went back to that apartment, it would be waiting for us. Dad got a call from Mom. "Where are you? Donna's trying to kill herself. I don't know what to do. You left us here. Come home and help." I felt the truth in Dad's words when he said that leaving the apartment would have fixed anything. Proof of it was what was happening with my sister, Dawn. She was in trouble. "Why did you say that place was cursed, Dad?" I asked him. "What do you know that you are not telling me?" Dad paused, looking a bit too thoughtful. "I was born in a village, son. I know about witchcraft. I have seen it. You don't know what it's capable of. But how do you know about all of this? What have you been hiding from us? He didn't respond right away. Those symbols, the rope with the knots, that and all dark magic. And that monkey. No, that wasn't an animal. It was something summoned by the witchcraft. But how do you know this, Dad? Have you been hiding something from us? Dad glanced at me for a moment. That thing, the one tied up. That what witchcraft looks like, the kind that destroys you. We need to understand what happened in that place before we can figure out how to fix it. He was right. There was something bigger going on. Something Dad wasn't telling me. Something I needed to find out. You need to leave, son, he said. Go back to your mother and siblings. Don't stay here. At that moment, I started to doubt my dad. He was hiding something big, and I wasn't going to stop until I knew what it was. At that point, I started suspecting that my father was hiding something really big. I'll stay by his side until I find out what it is. Is what my father in hiding something that could harm him? Or is it just knowledge and power I need to understand? I do not want to judge him, it would be unfair, but there is definitely something big coming. I'll find out and let you know soon. This is just the beginning of our story. Our conversation had me questioning everything. I'm sure he's hiding something from me, something I don't know about. He talking so insistently. It feels like he knows what's going on, and he convinced it dark magic. He's sudden the monkey we saw, and the papers are pieces of some dark spell. It's something only someone who practiced magic would know. Before I go into the details, let me remind you to listen to the first part of The Sorcerer Re-Sacrifice to understand everything that done been happening. My dad asked me to go back home, told me to take care of things, to watch over them until we figure out what is going on. The way he spoke was mysterious, his words jumbled. That my eye refused to leave. I told him I wasn't going anywhere. After a lot of back and forth, I decided to stay and keep an eye on things. I needed to know if I was the one wronging him, or if he was the one wronging all of us. And if I was suspicious, would this whole thing ever be solved? Would there be an end to it? It all started when we decided to search for the real estate agent who rented us the apartment. He must have the keys. There had to be something useful he could tell us. I told my dad, I handle some things. Then I believe. We called him without mentioning why we needed him. Honestly, if we told him the truth, he'd probably run away. So we just said we had issues with the apartment, the gas connections, all that. He said, okay, I've come over, Dad told him. We're the ones coming to you. And we got the address and went to his place. The man didn't lie to us, though. He welcomed us in without trying to avoid the subject. He still had no idea what was coming. After a bit of small talk, Dad started to bring up the topic without going into too many details. Just general ideas about what was happening. The man in face changed. He seemed uneasy and started to lie, saying, "What are you talking about? What nonsense is this? If you want to leave the apartment, just go. Don't not bother me." I could tell he was hiding something and was afraid to speak up. I kept quiet, respecting my dad, letting him take the lead. Dad said, "If you done, to believe us, come with me to the apartment. I'd show you what we have seen." The man trembled a bit when Dad offered that. He looked around, clearly frightened. Dad asked, "Are you coming with me, or do you have something to tell us?" I should have intervened. I wish I hadn't put myself in that situation. I didn't want to be involved, but I had to ask what is really going on. I said, "I'm going to leave now, no problem. But we not trying to cause any trouble. We just need to know what is going on." He broke down, saying, "I swear I didn't know this was going to happen to you guys. I was just doing what they told me." I had no choice, I swear. I didn't want to hurt you or your family. I just followed their orders because I was scared. Dad stood up, his voice cold as he asked, "Who gave you the orders? Who told you to give us this apartment? Who are they?" The man started to shake and said, "If I tell you, they kill me. If they find out, they'd kill me. You don't understand. I have no choice." Dad even more firmly said, "Tell me if you don't, I would have to make you." At this point, I thought it was better if I did not say anything, but it was already too late. The man broke down saying, "I swear, I did know this apartment. It was mine a few months ago. It was mine. I lived here with my son after my wife died. There was no one left but us. Our relatives lived in another country. It was just us trying to get by." He kept repeating himself, almost pleading with us, as if trying to avoid the truth. Dad interrupted, demanding, "I don't want to hear your excuses. Just tell us everything." The man hesitated for a moment, and then continued, "We stayed in the apartment for a few years. The guy who lived downstairs, he and his wife, they were nice people. They kept to themselves, never bothering anyone. We were friendly, exchanged pleasantries, but we didn't really talk much. But after a year or so, they had a son. His wife gave birth. I congratulated them, but when I knocked on the door to give them my best wishes, he didn't look happy. In fact, he looked terrified. I didn't pay much attention at first, but later, things started to get strange. After a few years of normal living, things started to deteriorate. The couple began fighting all the time, shouting at each other. I could hear them, loud as ever, every single day, morning, afternoon, evening, even late at night. Then one day I overheard her screaming, "It's magic, it's magic." I had no idea what she meant, but the strange part was that after every argument, they do, suddenly, go silent. For days, not a single sound would come from their apartment. It was as if they had disappeared after one of those silences. When I finally went over to see what was going on, I didn't hear anything. I waited for a while, but nothing happened. Then I started hearing odd noises, like someone singing or speaking in a language I couldn't understand. It sounded like broken music instruments. My son didn't understand what was happening. He was just a kid. But I could hear it clearly. I started to suspect something wasn't right. I could never forget the word magic that the woman kept shouting during their arguments. Then one day my son came running up the stairs holding a piece of paper saying, "Dad, Dad, I found something." It from their apartment. I took the paper from him, looked at it, but could understand what it meant. There were strange markings, scribbles, and symbols I could make out, but I could tell something was wrong. The smell was awful. I took the paper from him and burned it. I told him, "Don't go near their apartment again. Stay away from there." The silence returned, and for a while, everything seemed normal again. But after about a week, I noticed the foul odor coming from their place. I started to worry, called the police, and notified the neighbors. Soon the police arrived, and we broke down the door. The smell hit us immediately. It was like the smell of a graveyard, the kind of stench you get when someone had been dead for a few days. But we didn't have time to focus on the smell because the scene inside was a nightmare. The walls were covered in blood, chunks of flesh, and random items. Tissues, paper, and trash all stained with blood. It looked like a slaughterhouse. But the worst part was the body of the man and son, hanging from the balcony door, butchered beyond recognition. "How did you know it was him?" someone asked. I could tell because there were no other children. The women were wailing, and the men were shocked. I could stop myself. I had to know where the wife was. If the boy was dead, surely she was. 2. I found her body in the bedroom. Her face was blue, her eyes wide open, and her mouth was agape as if she had seen a demon before she died. One of the bystanders said, "This woman drowned." The police and paramedics were everywhere. The neighbors took the boy a body, and when they tried to move the woman, it was so heavy, it was like they were lifting a car. I saw something in her hand. She had been clutching a handful of salt. I don't know why that detail stayed with me. I don't know why. But at that moment, the landlord showed up and saw the scene. The second he did, he crumpled to the ground, wailing, slapping his own face as he screamed. "They have taken them away from me. I can bear this. Give them back. My son, please, give them back. Give me back my wife. Give her back to me." He kept slamming his fists against the walls, staring at them like they were listening, like he was begging them for answers. I grabbed Mr. Thompson's arm. "Who died here?" He flinched, his voice trembling. "The man. He lost his mind." He kept clawing at the blood-stained walls, smearing them like he was trying to erase a message only he could see. People tried to calm him, but he had to be restrained. He went completely mad. I later heard he was committed. But to be honest, I never went to see him. The apartment was sealed off. They treated it like a possible crime scene. That image, it still haunts me. I still taste that rot in my nightmares. I thought that was the end of it. Months went by with no word about the man, nothing in the news. The apartment remained sealed just like I told you, but I had to leave. I couldn't take it anymore. Every time I tried to sell it, people called it cursed. No one wanted it. I went on living, carefully avoiding the floor below. Then one day I found out the man had been released from the hospital. Somehow, I don't know how. Was he faking it? Or was he actually innocent? Then came the real nightmare. He came back. Yeah, he returned to the apartment. What would you have done? Gone down to greet him and risk it? Or pretended he didn't exist? I stayed away. He locked himself inside that place. I started hearing knocks at his door. The smell of sulfur. Yes, sulfur, especially at night. Strange murmuring voices from downstairs. But when I asked the neighbors, they all said the same thing. We didn't hear anything. Every Friday he would vanish. He'd be gone for a week, then come back late at night, almost forgot. He could dig in the backyard. Every single day I could never tell if he was burying something or someone. One afternoon while he was digging, he looked up at me, our eyes locked. I froze. I was just standing on my balcony, but it felt like death itself. Reached up and grabbed me by the spine. I was terrified. Of him, of the sounds coming from that apartment, of whatever he was doing down there. I was sure he had done something to his wife and kid, but what could I prove? Then one horrible evening, I was walking down the stairs with my son, Kyle. That's when I saw him. His face was twisted, black and grotesque. He didn't even look human. He was hunched over like a broken old man, far older than he should have been. But what I can erase, his hands. They were covered in deep gaping holes, leaking blood like something had burrowed inside them. I froze. Kyle stood beside me trembling. I forced a polite, "Good evening." But before I could finish, he screamed. Not at me, at Kyle. Like he wanted to kill him. That moment broke something inside me. Kyle changed after that every night. He'd cry and scream in his sleep. I had to hold him, whispering the Lord in prayer, reciting Psalm 91 over and over, but nothing worked. He'd wake up, clutching his head, shrieking like something was clawing at his mind. I quit my job. I couldn't leave his side. I was afraid I'd lose him one day. He tried to jump off the balcony. I stripped the place of anything sharp, anything dangerous. It didn't matter. The dark terrified him, and I couldn't understand why. Then one night I found him curled in the corner of his room, and standing beside him was something small and black, a shadow, motionless, watching. I tried to call out, but my voice would come. Slowly it began to take form, the silhouette of a boy, pale, hollow-eyed, with jagged cuts where his hands should have been. The man and son I knew then. He was behind all of this. The shadow vanished, and I rushed Kyle to bed, whispering prayers, begging for peace. But it never came. One night, I snapped. I stormed to the man apartment, pounding on his door. He opened it slowly, his eyes empty. Like a corpse answering the door, I hit him twice. Then again he did flinch, just stared, limp as a puppet. Then he raised a torn paper in front of his face and whispered, "To the Djinn's servants." "Servants?" I snarled. "You mean the Djinn? What did you summon?" He did not answer. That then when I saw it again. Inside the apartment, the shadow. This time it was smiling, and the maddened grin. It split his face like a rotting jacko. Lantern, his teeth blackened and sharp. I slammed the door shut and locked it. I didn't even know why. I just knew I had to. I didn't care what happened to him in there, but he didn't seem to care either. I pounded on the door, but nothing came back. That night, I packed Kyle and I left. But the shadow didn't stay behind. It followed. He was only 4. But every time the shadow appeared, Kyle would either burst into hysterical laughter or scream like he was dying. I kept praying over and over, but the cycle never stopped. I didn't know what to do. I felt like I was living inside someone else. A nightmare. Then, one morning, I woke up and found Kyle in bed, seemingly asleep, but something was off. I didn't notice at first, until I reached down to pull the blanket up and realized I wasn't covering him. I was covering something else. I'm not lying. I swear, I'm not. I took him to one of those people who deal with the occult. Not priests, something older, darker. They said the magic in that apartment still lingered. They said the man had summoned something and it had latched onto Kyle. They told me the curse needed a new host, a family with kids. Sacrifice them instead. One of them whispered, "Or your buoyant soul stays trapped." I didn't know what to believe, but I was desperate. They warned me, "Don't speak of what you've done." If I told anyone, the shadow would return, and next time, it wouldn't leave. I turned to my father, who had been silent the whole time. My voice cracked. "This is insane. You actually believe that garbage?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, it died true." I stared at him, stunned. My own father? So certain. He knew all about it. The rituals, the entities, the Djinn. "Dad, how do you know all this?" He looked at me, haunted, because I used to practice it when I was young. "Just like him," he whispered. "But I swear to God, son, I repented." I stopped. I haven't done anything in years. I didn't know what to say. My whole world was shifting beneath my feet. "The first time we stepped into that house," he went on, "I felt it. Something wrong. In the walls, in the air. I tried to figure out what it was, but I could. Maybe because Edu stopped. Maybe I just didn't have the ability anymore." He looked off to the side like he was seeing something from long ago. "I had dreams. Nightmares, really. Faces of people I heard in the past. They came to me that first night, told me I was walking into my own punishment, that I came willingly to the place of vengeance." I rubbed my hands over my face. "So those nightmares you had, they weren't just dreams?" He shook his head. "At first I thought they were, but when your sister, when Dawn started acting the way she did, I began to connect the dots." "So you were a sorcerer, Dad?" I said, voice rising. "Are you saying all the stuff that happened to Dawn, to Kyle? What I saw dragging Kyle across that bed, that all of it was connected to you?" "I didn't say that," he snapped. "I never said I meant for any of this to happen." I was almost shouting now. "So when you told me to go down into the locked-off basement with you, was it to fix something? Or were you just curious about what kind of magic this was? Some kind you had seen before? Were you trying to help, Dad? Or were you just hungry for it again?" He stood suddenly furious. "You don't understand a damn thing," he shouted. "I told you the truth. I would never hurt you, Zach. You're my son. I gave that life up." "You got a strange way of showing it," I muttered. "This is not just about Dawn or Kyle, this thing. This curse, it not on them, is it? It on me. I'm the one seeing all this stuff. He didn't deny it. You think I ham noticed? He said quieter now. Your mother and your siblings, they don't now see what you see. But they have seen you at night, walking in your sleep, standing in corners, speaking to the walls in tongues. My blood ran cold. I told them not to say anything. Told them to just play along when you asked. Did you see that? He sighed. But they didn't see it because it was never meant for them. It had on you, Zach. I could barely speak. So this whole time you weren't protecting them from the house. You were protecting them from me. I choked out, my throat raw. Yes, he said. And I was trying to find a way to help you too. I was looking to revive any old magic. I was trying to end it to save you. And now what? I asked. He looked me in the eye, steady and unblinking. Now, we go back to that house. The three of us. That ain't the only way to fix this. We go together. You, me, and Mr. Thompson. Thompson, the guy whose house it had been, nodded. If that's what it takes to save me and my boy, then fine. Go back. But I need to know something. What are the connection between what happened to us and what happening to your family? That house is not haunted. Sack it alive, Dad replied, and they've been feeding on us. On you, since the day we walked in. Thompson blinked. And what do we do about it? There are curses you can cleanse, Dad said. Salt water, scripture, but others. Some curses don't tend until the sorcerer who cast them dies. My chest tightened. So, are we going to kill someone, Dad? Yes, he said, voice low. We are? I stepped back. I am not a goddamn killer, I spat. You think I'd help you murder some dude after everything you've already done? Dad stared at me. Then one of two things will happen. Either he dies or we all do. You think I can protect your sister from you forever? Because I can. I shook my head. You're saying I might hurt her? Yes. Not because you want to, but because something inside you will make you. There was a voice in my head now, whispering. You're not a killer. How could you ever do this? But another part of me remembered what I always seen, what I do done, without knowing it. I didn't want to believe it, but the images flashed in my mind like broken glass in the sun. We went back to the house. I felt it before I even stepped inside. My chest got tight, like something heavy sat on it. I seen what was inside before, and it had changed. Thompson stood by the door, holding a bat like he was expecting a war. Dad jammed the crowbar into the doorframe, the wood splintering like it was rotted from the inside out. The door swung open with an eerie creak. It was exactly the same except the blood on the walls. This time it was fresh. Thick. Wet. Still dripping. One wall was soaked like someone had thrown a full bucket of blood across it. And then I saw it. The body of the ape, the one from the last time, rotting in the corner. I turned slowly, expecting something to leap out at us. Dad lit the incense and placed it carefully on the floor. Then he pulled out the old papers, the rose water, the strange powder from the apothecary. Saffron things I didn't recognize. He looked like some backwoods occultist, the kind you hear about in Appalachian horror stories. All gnarled hands and muttered psalms. And the voice inside me, it kept reminding me, you're still human. You're not a killer. Even if you help him, you're still responsible. I clenched my fists. Ad began to chant, his voice a slow, droning echo through the broken silence. Let them be released. Let them begin. Free them without penalty. Rate the 5-bound Djinn. By the authority of the first and the last, the Alpha and Omega, by the right of night and day, by the right of those on earth and in heaven, I call you to appear and salvage what remains. I name you I had shaman. I had Asham. I had at shaman. Come with these names. Release the 5 now. The room began to shake. Screams echoed from inside the walls. It sounded like people being torn apart, skinned alive. My ears rang with agony, like someone had driven nails into my skull, and twisted electricity surged through my limbs. My knees buckled. Dad just kept chanting over and over. Let them begin. Let them be released. Free the 5 bound. I clamped my hands over my ears. Enough, I shouted. Enough. Enough. But it was only just beginning. Screams, mixed with the sounds of cats, dogs, and rats, echoed through the walls alongside. Furious banging. It felt like 1,000 hands were pounding all around us. I began to tremble harder. It did feel like my dad was saving me. It felt like he was summoning something just like Ego always said. He pulled a lighter from his pocket and struck it down onto the papers that littered the floor. The flames caught fast, unnaturally fast. It was like the paper had been soaked in gasoline. The fire roared to the ceiling in seconds. And then from the bedroom something came crawling on all 4s. It moved like a skinwalker, joints snapping backward, claws gouging the floorboards. I tried to shout to warn Bob to watch out, but I didn't have time. It charged out, and despite its age and bloodied face, it moved with impossible speed. It wasn't coming for Bob. It was coming straight for me. It rushed me like a feral dog, shrieking as it leapt onto my chest. The man, if it was still a man, was on top of me. His hands tight around my neck, laughing wildly and muttering gibberish. My vision swam. My lungs begged for air. I thought, this is it. I'm going to die. And Bob just stood there, watching. Then suddenly, everything snapped. He was gone. The man, the laughter, the weight, all of it. I blinked, gasping, but I wasn't free. No, I was on top of Bob, beating him. My fists slammed into his face again and again. Something in me wanted to stop, but something darker would let go. I kept hitting him. It was our neighbor who finally pulled me off. I heard Bob I voice, muffled, rasping. Don't let it do more. Resist him. Zach. Then Bob opened his mouth, and from a pouch he produced a packet of saffron. He poured it over my chest. The red thread stuck to my sweat-drenched skin, the kind old Appalachian witches used for banishing. Then he forced rose water into my mouth, holding my jaw shut until I swallowed it. It scorched my throat like lava. My stomach erupted in fire. Bob began to chant. By the blood of the Lamb, release them. In Jesus' name, let them go. And I saw them. Shadows just like the ones I'd seen before, but taller, much taller. 5 in total. They slipped through the wall like ink and water. Bob looked at me and said, "You see, now we have to sacrifice him." I looked at the man. The thing collapsed on the floor. I didn't know if Ega passed out or died. Bob pressed the knife into my hands. "You gotta cut the curse out, Zach, like a tumor." "No," I whispered. "No, I'm not killing anyone. I won't." Bob stared at me in silence, the 5 towering shadows standing around the man watching. He squirmed, kicking against the ground. Bob held out the knife again. "End him I can," I said, backing away, and then Bob stepped forward. I turned my head. I didn't want to see what happened next, but I heard the sound of a blade cutting through flesh. The gurgle, that horrible wet rattle, and then silence. Tears burned in my eyes, but my body was frozen. The fire took over then. It spread from the cursed papers to the walls. The room burned. Bob burned. I just stood there watching it all, a bystander to the madness. The warlock burned. My father burned. And in the distance through the chaos I heard a voice. The Lord is my refuge and my fortress. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. Psalm 91, 1-4. It was our neighbor, his voice piercing through the static in my mind. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day. I blacked out when I came to. A whole month had passed. Both my arms were scorched. They told me they found me unconscious, collapsed in the street. The house had burned to the ground. No one else was found inside. I asked about Dawn. They said she was fine. Shiju turned up safe. But Bob, my dad, was never found. He vanished in that fire. My mom asked where he was. I lied, I don't know. Or was I supposed to say that Bob Miller had been a warlock, tried to summon demons, and was consumed by his own ritual? I tried to ask about the apartment former tenant. The answers were all over the place. Some said Hegel left a month ago. Others said 2 months. Some swore it had been years. 2, maybe 3. The next time I was near the building, I drove by in daylight. Curiosity gnawed at me. For on the sidewalk, I glanced up at the deck, the one that overlooked the backyard. There was a silhouette, a child in shadow, standing between the bars, peering through like a kid behind a jail cell. And next to it a larger shape, a taller, darker shadow, slowly taking shape. It was him, Bulb, his outline. Unmistakable. That was the last time I saw him, mad then. Nothing strange has happened. Life returned to normal as it could be. My mom believes there was a fire and that Bob died in it, or maybe disappeared. It is easier for her that way. But I still hear his voice. Every night when I sleep, he whispers over and over again, "Let them go, servants of these names. Release the prisoner of this place this day without penalty. Go now in these names." End of Revenge of the Djinn by Cosmic and Body Horror.